viewers, welcome to my YouTube channel. Get ready for heart-touching stories. Don't forget to subscribe and let's begin.
The morning Gloria first walked through my front door with measuring tape in her hand, I knew trouble had arrived wearing a smile. I am Margaret Calloway, 71 years old, widow of 33 years of marriage to the finest man God ever put breath into. When Harold passed 4 years ago, he left me two things. A modest pension in the house we'd built our life in, a three-bedroom craftsman on Elmwood Drive with a wraparound porch, a garden I'd tended since 1987, and walls that held more memories than any storage unit ever could. My son Daniel had always been the steady one. Quiet, thoughtful, the kind of man who called on Sundays and showed up with groceries when he knew I'd had a hard week. When he brought Gloria home for the first time 3 years ago, I made pot roast and set the good china and told myself to keep an open heart. Gloria was beautiful, polished in a way that suggested she knew it. She had the kind of confidence that fills a room before she finishes walking into it. She worked in corporate real estate, which I mention not as a criticism but as a fact that becomes relevant rather quickly. They married in a ceremony that cost more than my first car, my second car, and a semester of Daniel's college tuition combined. I wore my blue dress and danced with my son and cried the good kind of tears. Whatever reservations lived quietly in the back of my mind, I kept them there, well fed and silent. The first year was fine. The second year brought tension the way certain seasons bring storms, gradually, then all at once. It started with visits that felt less like visits and more like inspections. Gloria would arrive and walk through rooms with her eyes doing arithmetic I wasn't privy to. She'd mention casually that the guest bathroom tile was dated. She'd wonder aloud whether the garden took up too much of the yard. She'd ask questions about square footage with an air of professional curiosity that made my skin prickle. Daniel never seemed to notice. Or perhaps he noticed and chose the comfortable blindness that love sometimes offers. Then came the Sunday that changed everything. They arrived together, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that Gloria's mother, Renata, was in the backseat. Renata, who lived in a condo 2 hours away and whom I had met exactly 4 times. She was brought to my home without a phone call, without a mention, without so much as a text message warning. I served coffee. I was gracious. I am always gracious. After perhaps 20 minutes of small talk, Gloria set down her cup with the careful deliberateness of someone who has rehearsed a gesture, and said the words that rearranged the furniture of my entire understanding of the situation. Margaret, this is such a gorgeous house. My mother is going to love it here. We've been thinking it really makes the most sense for all of us to move in. The three of us, you have the space and it would help everybody. She said it the way you might suggest a new restaurant. Calmly, pleasantly, as though the decision had already been made somewhere I hadn't been invited. I looked at Daniel, he looked at the table, that look, that avoidance, that practiced study of woodgrain told me everything I needed to know about how long this conversation had been happening without me. I have a particular silence I deploy in moments of crisis. Harold used to call it my cathedral quiet, the kind of stillness that has weight and height and echoes. I used it then. When I finally spoke, I asked one question. Daniel, is this something you want? He looked up. To his credit, he didn't lie. He said, Mom, I think it could work. Gloria's mom needs more support, and with the commute and the cost of everything right now, that's not what I asked, I said. Another silence. Gloria filled it. She began talking about practicalities, expenses, space, her mother's loneliness, the housing market, the way multi-generational living was increasingly common and frankly quite sophisticated in many cultures. She was not wrong about any of it technically. But she was standing in my living room in front of my Harold's bookshelf talking about her mother moving into my home, and she had not asked me a single question. She had made an announcement. I let her finish. I am my mother's daughter, and my mother taught me that interrupting a person mid-speech robs you of the moral high ground. So I waited. When she was done, I said, Gloria, I want to make sure I understand. You're suggesting that you, Daniel, and your mother move into my home. It makes so much sense, she said, nodding. And where in this plan do I live? A brief confusion crossed her face. Here with us, we'd all be together. My own home, I said, as a guest in my own home. A guest as family. Let me stop you there. I stood up, not in anger, but because some things are better said on your feet. This house was built by my husband's hands and my husband's savings. I have lived here for 38 years. I buried Harold from this porch. My children grew up under this roof, and you have come here today without a phone call, without asking, and told me your mother is moving in. Not asked, told. Renata, to her credit, had gone very still and was staring into her coffee cup as though it contained the secrets of the universe. Daniel said, Mom. No, I said, gently but completely. Not yet, Daniel. I looked at Gloria. I have tried very hard to welcome you into this family. I have bit my tongue at things that hurt me. I have shown up and been present and treated you with the respect a daughter deserves. But this is not how family works. You don't announce your way into someone's home. You ask. Gloria's composure flickered. I didn't think you'd mind. You didn't think, I said. That's precisely the issue. Silence that followed had a different texture. Less cathedral, more aftermath. Daniel drove his mother-in-law home shortly afterward. I sat with him at the kitchen table for the better part of an hour, just the two of us, the way we used to sit when he was 15 and struggling with something he didn't have words for yet. I told him I loved him without condition. I told him I understood that marriage requires loyalty to a spouse, and that I respected that and that I would never ask him to choose. I told him that Gloria was his partner and that whatever difficulties existed between us were mine and hers to work through like adults. But I also told him the truth, that this house was not a solution to be deployed, that I was not a resource to be managed. That at 71 years old, after everything I had survived and built and lost and rebuilt, I deserved to be asked, just asked, that one small courtesy. He cried a little. Daniel always cried the honest way, no performance, just the real thing leaking out around the edges. He said, "She means well, Mom, she just doesn't always know how." "Then she'll learn," I said. "We all do," Gloria called 3 days later. I almost didn't answer. Then I remembered that the brave thing and the easy thing are rarely the same thing, and I picked up. She apologized. Not the non-apology that begins with "I'm sorry you felt," but an actual, direct, uncomfortable apology. She said she'd been so focused on solving a logistical problem that she'd bulldozed over my feelings, and she was sorry. She said her mother was her blind spot, the way certain people we love become blind spots. I told her I accepted her apology. I also told her that if she ever genuinely wanted to discuss the idea of her mother having a place to live, whether that meant a converted space, a nearby apartment I could help research, or some other arrangement entirely, I was willing to have that conversation. As a conversation, between two adults who respected one another, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You're not what I expected, Margaret." I laughed at that, a real laugh. "I imagine not," I said. We found Renata a lovely 2-bedroom apartment 12 minutes from Elmwood Drive. Close enough for Sunday dinners, far enough for everyone to breathe. I helped pick out curtain rods. Gloria seemed surprised by that. I was not. The relationship between me and my daughter-in-law is not perfect. It is a work in progress, which is, I have come to believe, the only honest description of any relationship worth keeping. She is learning that I am a person with a history and a backbone. I am learning that her bluntness, so often mistaken for coldness, is in fact a kind of frightened efficiency. She solves problems loudly because silence was never safe for her growing up. We are figuring each other out. That is enough. My garden is blooming this spring. The roses Harold planted along the south fence came back thick and red, the way they do every April, as though they're showing off. I sit on my porch in the evenings and drink tea and watch the neighborhood do its small, ordinary things. And I am so profoundly grateful for every ordinary inch of it. This house is mine. Not in the legal sense only, in the sense that matters more. In the sense that it holds the shape of my life, all the grief and the laughter and the years, pressed into its walls like flowers in a book. No one is going to announce their way into it. But the door is always, always open to those who bother to knock.